Get ready for your weekly dose of pixie dust with Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and on today's show, I have Jack with me from the No Midnight podcast. Hello, and welcome to the show, Jack. How's it going?
Hey, Jeff. I'm doing splendid over here in sunny Sacramento, California.
How hot is it up there? Because it is hot here in Burbank.
It is blazing. I've had to turn off the fan for our recording session, and man, oh man, the sweat is pouring.
Okay. By the end of this, you'll be dripping.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, we are here because I wanted to have a little conversation with somebody about the Disney Channel, who is in a different generation than myself, because the Disney Channel has seen so many changes through the years, and so basically we picked 3 shows each of what we loved from Disney Channel, and we're going to have a little discussion about this. So let's get to that right now.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
All right, Jack, so the Disney Channel, we all grew up watching it in some way, shape, or form. Yes, it premiered on April 18th, 1983, way before you were born. In fact, so the listeners know, how old are you?
I am 17 years old. I was born in 2000.
So, oh my God.
That's the reaction I get from most people when doing these podcasts.
It's not even the 90s. Oh, goodness. 2000.
Yeah.
I thought you were 18 even. You're 17.
17.
All righty. Well, so obviously we're coming from a very different place. I'm older than 17. We'll put it that way.
Just a little bit.
A little bit older than 17. And the Disney Channel has been around your entire life, most of my life, well, pretty much my entire life. And so from 1997 to 2002, I don't even know if you know this. Did you know that you had to pay for the Disney Channel at one point?
No, I didn't. Was that a thing?
That was like a real thing. When I was a kid, I didn't have Disney Channel because it was it was like HBO essentially.
Whoa.
You had to pay for Disney Channel. And, from early on in 1983, that's how it started. And then from 97, some places started having it for free. And then between 97 and 2002, it was kind of dependent on where you lived. And then in 2002-ish, it became free if you had, cable. Yeah. So there was a time where, in fact, we used to steal Disney Channel because they used to do this thing 4 times a year where they would do a week where you could get it for free just to try and get you to subscribe.
Yeah, kind of like how SiriusXM does their, if you have Sirius in your car, they'll give you those channels for free for a week just to tease you a little bit.
Exactly. And so they used to do that with Disney Channel, and if you knew which day they were going to take it away from you, you could unplug the cable on the back of your cable box so that it doesn't zap that takeaway signal. And then you'd have it for another week or 2.
You hardcore jerry-rigged it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, this was a thing you did in the 80s and 90s. This wasn't anything, geez, this is just what people did. And it was, oh my goodness, it was a treat whenever we had that freebie week of the Disney Channel. I loved it so much. But in any case, we're going to talk about some of our favorite shows, and I'm going to start with one of yours. Okay. You chose The Suite Life on Deck.
Yes. OAO, this boat's rocking. Ain't no stopping us now.
Is that the theme song?
Because we're living the sweet life now. Yes, it is.
All right. So this show was on the air from 2008 to 2011. I'll tell you what I did. So we watched episodes of each other's chosen shows. And I'll tell you what I did know about this show before watching this episode. I knew that it's a spin-off of The Suite Life of Zach and Cody.
Yeah.
And so did you watch Suite Life as well?
Yes. So I watched Suite Life. Suite Life was I was beginning to transition from Playhouse Disney over to the actual Disney Channel. And which Playhouse Disney is now what Disney Junior is. So it was kind of Roly Poly Oly, Stanley. I'm trying to think of other fun ones. Out of the Box. Some of those kind of early toddler shows. And then moving into Disney Channel was the tail end of Suite Life of Zach and Cody. And then as I was getting into prime Disney Channel watching, it was Suite Life on Deck.
Okay, so The crazy thing is, when I was a kid, all of that was one channel.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the Disney Channel, and it broke up segments of the day.
Yeah.
So like early in the day would be the young kid stuff. But yeah, now they've separated it all into different channels.
Yeah, and originally when I think it probably separated into Disney Junior. I'm trying to remember because my sister, who is 14, was still on the Disney Junior train when they broke it off into the extra channel. But I do remember it being, switching at some point in the day to the Disney Channel instead of being Disney Playhouse Disney. So I kind of understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so Sweet Life on Deck. Tell me what you loved about Sweet Life on Deck.
Well, Sweet Life on Deck kind of introduced this new character of Bailey, who was played by Debbie Ryan, who later went on to be the nanny in a show called Jessie. And the interaction that her and Cody had was like something kind of different, because in the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, we had Zach and Cody just up to all these different antics in the hotel, and there was never really like a love interest. But as they grew up into teenagers, it was kind of like, romance and trying to figure out, like girls and like all this different stuff. And they introduced these cool new characters, but kept some of the fun ones. Like Mr. Mosby was still on the Sweet Life on Deck. You still had London Tipton, of course, and then Zach and Cody as well.
And didn't the original show had Ashley Tisdale, right?
It did, yeah. So Ashley Tisdale and some of the other like wacko characters, like there was a butler named Esteban that was pretty prominent, and their mom, who was the singer at the hotel. They would make guest appearances every once in a while on Sweet Life on Deck, but it was mostly these new characters plus Zach and Cody, and Mr. Mosby.
Are the parents on the ship?
The parents are not on the ship. It's pretty much like a boarding school, but on international waters, which I think was pretty cool.
I thought it was terrible. This was rough to sit through. Now, I'm curious if you'll know. Do you know how I know Dylan and Cole Sprouse? The first thing that I know them from?
I'm trying to think. Oh, didn't they play John Travolta's twins on Full House?
What? John Travolta's not on Full House. Who do you think? John Stamos?
John Stamos.
John Stamos. No, they're not the twins from Full House. No, I know them from I know them from an Adam Sandler movie called Big Daddy.
Oh, yes.
They only played one character, but they were the they played the same character, but they swapped them out. And I remember them from that, and they were great on that movie. And then I heard about them getting this Disney Channel show, and it's the thing about it is it's so Disney Channel acting, and it's really funny because like out here in LA there are specifically schools that like teach that style of acting, which is really, really bad, but it's obviously has an audience, and it's obviously made for a very specific audience. But yeah, that was an interesting one to sit through.
Yeah, it's super interesting because like looking back on it, because my sister and I watched it again today just for fun and just so that I could brush up on that episode. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wow, like this is very different than I remember it being. And it's kind of interesting to look back at nostalgia and be like, this is something that I really loved. And then you really kind of, hindsight is a bit 2020 where you look at it again and you're like, wow, this really wasn't good, but it was so formative to my childhood. I just remember it as being like this great thing.
It's super, super, super true. And it's funny with nostalgia because sometimes you can go back and look at it and still love it, even though you recognize, okay, this isn't what I used to remember it as, but I still love it. And then sometimes you go back and you just can't stand it. Like a show I cannot watch but loved as a kid is Saved by the Bell.
Oh, yeah.
I have a hard time watching reruns of that show. It's just cringy to me. But I loved it as a kid, and I still, like, if somebody said, hey, do you like Saved by the Bell? I'd be like, yeah, I love that show. But I would not sit through an episode anytime soon. So it's interesting. I will say, so the Asian actress on the show, how old is she supposed to be? Is she like their age?
Brenda Song is supposed to be their age, probably a little bit older.
She looks way older.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be the same grade for some reason because like they're in the same class. but she's definitely older. Yeah, I never understood that kind of concept of that show.
Yeah, I was looking at her. I'm like, this girl is clearly a lot older than the rest of these kids, which I thought was very, very strange. The laugh track was, do you happen to know whether or not they did a live audience? Because it certainly sounded like a pre-recorded laugh track.
Definitely did not do a live audience. That was definitely pre-recorded.
Yeah, and that's always interesting where they decide to put in those laughs. But the thing for me is I always wonder what it's like to be one of the adult actors on these shows. Because, listen, employment is employment and good for them. They were on a TV show. But man, there must have been days where you're just like shaking your head like, what am I doing? This is insane. But we'd all take the gig, right?
Oh, totally.
So it's just so funny to me. I am curious, do you happen to know, did they ever do some sort of Disney Cruise Line promotion with this show?
I do not know that for sure. That would have been so cool, though, if like they kind of created the set of the show on a Disney Cruise Line.
It just seems like a kind of a given promotion. They should have done something. I'm sure they did little things, but I feel like if they had like really gone out and done something, the thing is it's a very specific age group, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And I feel like Cruise Line was still kind of in its infant stages as this show kind of was. You know, they weren't doing as many promos.
Yeah, well, this was 2008 to 2011, and Disney Cruise Line's been around a lot longer than that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know. It was definitely, if they didn't do anything, it definitely missed opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And now, specifically, this episode you had us watch, what was...
Yeah, I had to turn it off at the end. It just got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful.
Yeah, there's, one of the characters hired somebody to pretend to be her so that she could get out of chores and stuff, and it was kind of ridiculous. And here's the thing, I actually like Dylan and Cole. Cole is on Riverdale now, right?
Yes.
I don't really watch that show, but I like him, and like I follow Dylan on social media. I like these kids. I think that they're fun and funny, but I think that their performance on these shows was just so bad.
Yeah, it was not up to standards of like where Riverdale is now. Cole has definitely kind of come out of his shell a little bit and is now kind of hot stuff when it comes to Riverdale, and we don't know where Dylan is, quite honestly.
Yeah, his social media is interesting. His Instagram is he's a bit of a wild child, I'll tell you. But yeah, that's Sweet Life on Deck. That was that I can honestly say that was my absolute first time watching that show.
Okay.
I knew of it. I'd never seen an episode, and I was a little bit more familiar with Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. But good for them, man. They had a nice long run on Disney Channel.
Long run.
Yeah. Well, let's jump over to one of the shows that I chose. Which one do you want to talk about for a minute?
Let's see. Let's save the best for last. So let's talk about Phil of the Future.
Oh, you're saying Phil of the Future is the worst?
No, definitely. I think the one that I because they were all really fun to watch. I really enjoyed a lot of them, but the one that kind of was a bit peculiar comparatively was Adventures in Wonderland.
Yes. We'll get to that one. But let's see. Phil of the Future ran from 2004 to 2006. And to be honest, this was not my growing up show. This was a show I somehow discovered. I didn't watch it religiously, but I kind of fell in love with it simply because of Ricky Ullman, who I think is genius on this show. And I wish we saw more of him these days. I think he's fantastic, but I am curious, were you familiar with this show at all before I told you to watch it?
I had heard bits and pieces because some of the podcasts that I listened to, they will make old references to older Disney properties. But I'd never seen it, and I never really knew the premise. And then I watched the episode, and the whole premise is explained in the theme song.
Yeah.
Which I loved when they used to do that.
Because he's a 22nd century man.
Exactly.
Yeah, this show was so fun, but I will say, looking back, even though it wasn't that long ago, once again, that character of the caveman is
oh my gosh
ridiculous. That's one of those roles where I'm like, oh God, put a bullet in my head. Like that's
poor
rough.
Guy who had to play the caveman, like, geez Louise.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, we didn't see the character of the principal in this episode, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same actor. He would
really?
Yeah, he would just take off all the caveman gear and be the
That's
school
wild.
principal. I think that was the case. But yeah, like, so what did you think of this overall? Like, is this a show that when you were a kid, you think you would have watched?
I think I totally would have watched this show, for one thing. It was a fun, like, episode, and it went by really quickly. It was one of those ones that was very plot, just here's what's going on. Very silly in that sense because, they go on the road trip in this episode, and they're supposed to get pulled over by the police, and he thinks that they're giving them 2 tickets to the show instead of 2 tickets, and he makes a reference to drunk driving, and he only gets a ticket and not arrested. So like it was just kind of all over the place when it came to that. But there was a heavy use of sound effects, which I thought was really kind of interesting. It was back in the every single piece of dialogue, instead of using a laugh track per se, it was more of different sound effects to really kind of push the story forward, which I thought was kind of interesting. And all the characters were, we only saw I think it was 5 or 6 of them, of the characters. Who was the blonde that was good friends with Phil? Was that like his girlfriend or like his sister?
No, so that's his best friend, and then the little girl's his sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I love Ricky Ullman. I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, I love the way that the interactions between the 3 characters, because the parents were on a road trip, so then it was the best friend Phil and the sister that were having all these different interactions, and I loved the way that they kind of were, the sister was almost like nice to them at first and wanted to make them snacks, but then was also trying to like play pranks. And then, it was just like, it was a fun action-packed like 23 minutes.
Yeah, his sister's evil is what I will say.
Totally.
She's
totally
super evil. But so this is the first time you'd actually watched an episode of Phil of the Future.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. First time ever watching Phil of the Future.
Wow. What a treat. Lucky you. I will say it didn't hold up as well as I happen to remember it. And
same thing with Sweet Life.
But it was interesting. Your comment about the sound effects is really interesting. I did notice it when I was watching, but I didn't really think much of it. And you're right. It's kind of got like a cartoony feel to it. And I definitely think it had a different feel than Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. And it's so what were the year differences? So that was 2004 that started. And Sweet Life was, after. Geez, 2008 to 2011. Way after. So, it's changed quite a bit. So let's go back to one of yours. I'm going to just say, which one do you want to talk about?
Let's go with, we'll go with Kickin It.
Kickin It.
Disney XD, which was then probably, I must have been 8 or 9 when Disney XD became a thing. And that was like pretty much their cartoon channel and their kind of, I don't know, I would say the B-sides of Disney Channel.
Yeah, so I honestly never really grew up with Disney XD and don't pay too much attention to it. So I had never even heard of this show. But one of the things that I always talk about now is when I was in Disney Channel, I mean, a lot of the shows, and we'll talk about Adventures in Wonderland in a minute, but a lot of the shows like felt and looked like Adventures in Wonderland had a very, very different style than Nickelodeon. And nowadays, I feel like Nickelodeon and Disney Channel styles are very similar. Like, and maybe it's just being older, so you can't really tell the difference. I don't know what it is, but I look at them now, like I could be flipping through the channels and land on one of these shows and totally think it's Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. And, they just look very similar to me. And Kickin It definitely felt like it could have been on Nickelodeon. Oh,
totally. And we're talking about actors and the performances that they were giving. It was so incredibly funny to watch because I made sure that while I was trying to find these episodes, I found the pilot and I was like, this is perfect because then you get a little bit of the story behind the entire kind of show. Mm-hmm. And so with the pilot and watching these young actors trying this show for the first time, definitely Olivia Holt, who plays Kim, her first kind of big role in a show, and same with Leo Howard, I'm pretty positive. So it was funny to watch them act and see how kind of awful they were at acting, quite honestly.
I gotta be honest though, I liked this show way more than I expected to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought like the lead kid's great. Like he's clear. What's his name? Do you know?
Leo Howard.
Leo Howard. He is clearly a martial artist because so the premise of this show is that well, what is the premise exactly? They're into karate.
They're into karate. Hannah Montana's brother owns a dojo.
Whoa, wait. Legitimately, it's Hannah Montana's brother?
No, it's
okay.
What was his name? I forget the actor's name, but the actor who played Hannah Montana's brother.
Gotcha.
Then played the sensei at the Wasabi Dojo, and then there were this group of five friends, I think, that kind of are, the main focus of it is karate, but then all these different storylines that come off of it.
I don't know if I mentioned it, but this one ran from 2011 to 2015. And as you mentioned, on Disney XD, there was one of the kids that was clearly, once again, considerably older than the rest. Mm-hmm. And I'm dumbfounded when that happens. I'm like, well, what are they thinking? These kids are all supposed to be the same age. This kid's clearly got a good 5 years on the others. Like, yeah, this is crazy to me. But I actually thought it was kind of fun to watch. Once again, ridiculous and silly. But I think the lead kid really kept that show together, and I don't know what he's doing now. That Mr. Howard.
I really don't think much, quite honestly.
I was impressed by his skills, and at first I was like, "Oh, they got stunt doubles," and then I'm like, no, that's clearly that kid. Like he's good at this. So it's
Leo Howard is up to nothing at this point, and it was Jason Earls was Hannah Montana's brother. In Hannah Montana, and is then the sensei. But it was kind of interesting to watch the pilot again, and I don't know if you kind of saw this, but there were a lot of comparisons to what is that movie?
Karate Kid?
Yeah, that movie. The one with karate.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of, because you have two feuding dojos in this episode, the Black Dragons and the Wasabi Warriors, and they have this tournament at the very end where, spoiler alert, they try and take out Jack as he's dueling the main guy of the Black Dragons, and then
and they cheat, of course. Ugh.
Of course, those scoundrels. But I don't know, it's kind of fun to see kind of a bit of it's almost like a bit of a spoof on the Karate Kid in a sense.
You know what I find really interesting about these shows, and I think that like children's viewing habits aren't like adults. Like as an adult, I think not everybody, but I know if I watch a TV show, I really watch the show. Like I'll watch it every week and I'll get the entire story. Whereas with children, they kind of like jump in wherever. They'll watch episodes out of order. They'll, not watch an entire series. They'll just watch little pieces of it. So like because of that, they have to write these things very differently. So I am a little curious. Did you happen to by any chance watch this entire series?
So I'm trying to remember. I definitely came into it right when it started, and I was super excited about it, and then definitely like lost TV privileges a couple weeks, missed a couple episodes, came back to it, maybe went on to another show, came back in a different season. I don't feel like we watched it all the way through, but there was definitely a time period where my sister and I would run downstairs at 7:30 in the morning, go on Xfinity on demand, and go and see if the latest episode had been put on demand so that we could watch it with limited commercials. But I don't think I got all the way through the entire show. No.
Those are privileges of children living in the 21st or then in the 21st century, because we didn't have on demand when I was a kid. I will say though, the thing that I did make sure that I saw as a kid was Snick. You don't even know what Snick is, do you?
I have no idea what Snick
Oh my
is.
goodness, Snick was Saturday Night Nickelodeon, and it was four shows, and they would change the lineup every once in a while. But that was like something I was diehard into, and that was like, that was scheduled TV viewing time for myself. But other than that, like everything else was just like, yeah, I'll catch it if I catch it type of attitude. So. I believe there have been studies shown that most children's shows they'll shoot 3 seasons of it, because by the time that the 3 seasons is over, the child that started at the beginning will have either moved on, or not passed on, moved on, or somebody new could start watching it. A different generation of kids could just start watching the repeats, and it'd be new to them. So it is interesting, that these shows tend to have pretty short runs. But let's go back to one of mine. Which one did you want to do next?
Let's do Adventures in Wonderland.
Okay, so this show is wacko crazy.
Yeah,
like classic original Disney Channel stuff. I mean, it wasn't original because it started in 92 and ran to 94, which once again, like if you would have told me that show ran only from 1992 to 94, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like it was spent on TV forever. I guess when you're a kid, 92 to 94 does feel like forever, but it was pretty iconic Disney Channel back then. It's crazy.
Yeah, totally. It was one of those shows. Oh, geez. It felt very, it was like story driven, but also variety in the sense that there were like different things happening, but like also puppets and like kind of scary, but at the same time, like very like meant for younger kids. So was this one actually on Disney Channel, or was it part of the morning block where it was kind of like the preteen, before the preteen Disney stuff?
I'm pretty sure it was an early morning show. Like they showed this, I think, with like a long the Pooh Corner show, whatever they called that, and Dumbo Circus. Oh my goodness, you've probably never seen Dumbo Circus, have you?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
You should YouTube that. Dumbo Circus is something special, I'll tell you. Oh my goodness, with the new live action Dumbo coming out, I want to see that recreated with the puppets and characters from Dumbo Circus. Oh, that'd be fantastic. But no, Adventures in Wonderland, one of the cool things about it is that it's shot at Disney MGM Studios. In fact,
really?
Yeah. In fact, back in the day, Alice's house that you see at the beginning of every episode, the exterior was part of the studio backlot tour. It was on Residential Street before they destroyed that. So it was kind of fun to like know that. And this is one of those shows that like very clearly shot on a soundstage. They didn't try to hide that fact. It was very theatrical looking. And as you said, like a lot of mixes of things. There were humans, but then there were humans in like mascot like costumes, then puppets, and it's kind of all over the place. And it was one of those shows, since it was for young children, very much had a lesson in each episode. And the episode we watched was about recycling. And yeah, it is a little trippy to go back and watch it. Had
Just a little bit.
Great theme song though.
Oh, yes, definitely. Theme song was awesome. And then kind of moving along, I think there were like 2 or maybe even 3 other songs in that one episode. It seems like it would have been heavy on the writing.
Yeah, a lot of musical numbers on that show. And I actually looked into Elizabeth Harnois, I think is how you pronounce it. She's still working. She played Alice. And she is still working quite a bit. She does like a lot of episodic TV.
Yeah, my sister and I were kind of doing some research, definitely, because we were like, she seems familiar, and we couldn't pinpoint exactly where we had seen her from, but yeah, it looks like she's still doing a lot of different TV work.
Good for her.
Yeah, totally.
The background music on this show is a bit laughable. It's very 1990s synthesizer type of sound.
Yeah, totally. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, this is totally 1990s.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite character on that show?
Oh man. I'm trying to remember what the name of the character was. I don't know if it was my favorite or if it was just the scariest, but it was the one that had kind of like, was it like a sheep? I don't even know exactly what.
Wait a sec, White Rabbit?
Yes, White Rabbit.
You thought he was a sheep.
Just the way that the costume was, I was like,
On rollerblades.
on roller. Yes, that was weird too.
Talk about 90s. Like that.
Totally 90s.
We'll put one of our lead characters on rollerblades.
On rollerblades and have him skate around the trash can to make sure that you throw it in the recycling bin. That's some pretty solid writing right there.
It's classic Disney Channel. Oh man, now I really want you to check out Dumbo's Circus because it was, I mean, here's the thing. You would never see anything like Adventures in Wonderland on Nickelodeon. Ever. And that's what I loved about old school Disney Channel. Like, that's why I wanted to have this episode because, like, you didn't have that.
Mm-mm.
And I don't know. Actually, I'm curious now. Did you feel like as a kid there was much of a difference between Nickelodeon and Disney Channel?
Well, as a young kid, we could, like, I would compare Adventures in Wonderland a little bit more towards, like, Sesame Street or, like, stuff that was on, like, Sprout. I don't even remember if Sprout, I think Sprout was, like, PBS, like, kind of the PBS type younger kid shows. But there was definitely a separation of, like, young Nick kid shows. Like, you had SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents.
But even those, like SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents, feel nothing like Disney. Sure, they're young kids' animated shows, but like they're not Disney-centric at all.
You compare that to something like Roly Poly Oly from my time or Out of the Box. Those felt so different from Nickelodeon.
Okay, and those were Disney.
Yeah.
And okay.
It had a completely different feel to them. Even, from animation style to the writing to, it felt like Nick was always going for that older audience, but still trying to capture the younger kids. Whereas Disney was really solid about making sure that they had that content for the really young kids. Something like Little Einsteins compared to, something like, just one of those other animated shows on Nick. There was something that was very different between the two.
Okay, so interesting point. So maybe for the younger audiences, it was more evident. I think when they got to like the tween shows is maybe where it started to mix a little bit. And I actually interviewed DJ McHale, who directed the Tower of Terror movie, but he also was one of the co-creators of the series Are You Afraid of the Dark, which I hope you're familiar with.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. And when I was talking to him, he was very specific that like the casting for Are You Afraid of the Dark, the casting people were very much told, we want our children to not look Disney. Like Nickelodeon very specifically wanted the everyman kid, whereas Disney had a very specific, polished look to their actors. Nick wanted the complete opposite. Which kind of leads me into your next show, Zeke and Luther, which was once again a Disney XD show, because this 100% could have been on Nickelodeon. Like it has that feel to it. And I'm surprised. I actually looked it up to make sure like you weren't confused. I was like, did he maybe think this was Disney Channel, but it's actually Nickelodeon? It feels so Nickelodeon to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, the words kick, flip, and grind. Now back to Zeke and Luther on Disney XD have been ingrained in my mind at this point. But, watching Zeke and Luther again, you definitely can draw some hardcore comparisons to some of the Nickelodeon shows just because of the style of acting. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, not to be rude, but the kids are not polished. Like, these kids are, for lack of a better term, dirty looking. And so I was shocked that this was a Disney show. Now, Disney XD does have a bit more of that vibe than Disney Channel.
Pushing a bit more the boundary of not that perfect Disney kid. It's more of a, this is real life to an extent, I guess. That's why it was like the B-sides of Disney Channel.
Yeah, no, this one ran from 2009 to 2012, so fairly recent, which made me question a couple things on it because, well, I guess 2009 was almost a decade ago. It's 9 years ago. But when was the first iPhone invented? Because these kids had flip phones. Is that something that people still had flip phones in 2009 to 12?
Yes, definitely still had flip phones. I got my first slide phone in 2012.
Okay, well then I guess it was accurate. I couldn't believe it because when I hear 2009 to 2012, I still think, oh, that's pretty current. But now when I actually think, it's 9 years ago. That's a long time. Gosh,
I know, it's crazy to think about. Like, I was thinking, Kickin It seems like it wasn't that long ago, and then I'm like, holy moly, that was like 4 years ago. Like, that's crazy. I was watching that show 5 years ago. I was in a completely different spot in my life when I was watching that show.
Yeah. And not only did they have a flip phone, they actually like had a digital camera. They didn't take photos with their phone. And I was just so thrown through a loop watching this because, I don't know, it didn't feel that dated to me, but then that stuff happened and I'm like, holy moly, this is like a different lifetime. This is crazy.
Yeah, it was also kind of fun to look at the editing style, and this is kind of getting into a bit of the intricacies of the show, but like looking at the editing style of Zeke and Luther, I was kind of relating it a little bit back to Phil of the Future. Not in the quality sense, because obviously Phil of the Future had, there was definitely more moving parts to that show, whereas Zeke and Luther is a bit more goofy, but they also used a lot of sound effects in Zeke and Luther. It was a bit more minimalist, I think, because that's kind of where the culture shifted towards as these shows continued to evolve as time went on. But you could see the type of editing where it was like, zoom in cuts to sound effects. Like, I don't know, it was fun to kind of draw the comparisons between the two.
Yeah, it's interesting with these shows for kids because they very specifically use a lot of bright colors on them because it's kind of like the transition from cartoons to very bright, kind of unrealistic real life. And then as we get older, of course, we get more into realism on television. But like, I even remember, just to go back to Saved by the Bell for a second, but like that was part of when I was a kid. You probably don't even remember this. Did you ever have like Saturday morning cartoons?
Of course. Okay, so I'm not young enough to not be a Saturday morning cartoon person, but
okay,
I got you on that one.
Okay, cool. That makes me feel a little bit better. But no, the reason I mentioned it is because, like, I actually feel bad that kids today don't have Saturday morning cartoons because, and I understand why they don't exist, is because you can watch cartoons whenever and wherever you want. Like, there's literally entire networks dedicated to it. So I understand that. But I will say Saturday morning cartoons was a really big deal when I was a kid. Like, you'd wake up early and watch the cartoons in the morning, and then 11 a.m. would hit. And that's when Saved by the Bell would come on TV. And so, since they were going from cartoons all morning to Saved by the Bell, a live action show, they actually very specifically made their sets bright and colorful and the kids' clothes bright and colorful because it was like that transition. So, I don't know. I find it kind of interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, it's so cool that, there was a thought process behind that. And, with all of these different networks and kind of the way that TV is moving, there's definitely all of these underlying thoughts that the networks and the people creating the content have to kind of make it more of a seamless transition. So it's very interesting that you say that Saved by the Bell kind of was very vibrant, and then it eventually kind of moved more into, as the day went on, and moved more into that realism sense.
Yeah. So there's actually thought that goes behind this. It's not just a bunch of people messing around. But it's funny because, I think we all are like, oh man, Disney Channel was so much better back when I was a kid. And then I go back and I watch some of these things. I'm like, wow, it wasn't that much. It was definitely different than what it is today. But as far as like quality is concerned, it's, they were making what the people wanted at the time. And they're doing
it's like a time capsule.
Yeah, it totally is. It's a crazy time capsule. I think even more than the shows, I think one of the things I miss most is like the throws to commercial breaks or whatever, which didn't really exist on Disney Channel back then because it was a private cable network. And do they have commercials now? They do, but it's always for Disney. No, they'll have like toy commercials and stuff on Disney Channel, right?
They have toy commercials on Disney XD. Okay. And they had infomercials on Disney XD, but they would never have them on Disney Channel. They would only have toy commercials if it was like, this show brought to you by Mattel, about, whatever Barbie it was, and then it would go into a promo for another Disney Channel show.
Okay, so I just remember, like, coming up next on Disney Channel, and like all those little tags and stuff. Those are so great. Like, I'm sure somebody on YouTube has like created an entire video just focusing on those, but those were so much fun. And I loved it so much. I even enjoyed the stupid, as I mentioned before, they used to give you Disney Channel free for a week. And so obviously it was full of commercials of, if you'd like to get the Disney Channel all of the time, just call 1-800. And you'd always see this woman sitting behind a computer, and like, those were great. I hated them at the time, but now, oh my goodness.
It was to the point where you could recite the phone number because you had to hear it so many gosh darn times when you were watching it for that week.
Yeah, it was good stuff. In fact, Disney Channel is, the people who listen to Disney Coast to Coast regularly know that I am obsessed with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Uh-huh.
And please tell me you've seen it.
Of course.
Okay. Whew.
Yes.
Disney Channel.
And the show at Disneyland.
Honey, I Shrunk the Audience? Nice. Have you seen Honey, I Blew Up the Kid?
I have not seen Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Oh, you should see that.
Is that one I need to put on the list?
Yeah, I love it. Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves is not very good, but I mean, it's part of the Honey, I Shrunk franchise, so I say see it. But although, you know what I never did watch? I never did watch the TV show, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because I checked it out once. I didn't care for it very much, and it didn't star Rick Moranis. So I was like, yeah, I don't need this in my life. But what was it? Oh, Disney Channel's the first time I ever saw Honey, I Shrunk the Kids during one of those free 1-week trials. They were showing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids because I never saw it in theaters. And I'll just remember that there's a line in the movie where one of the kids, I think it's Russ, he goes, "We're all the size of bugs." And I was, that's what I grew up knowing. We're all the size of bugs. And then eventually I got like a VHS copy of it and was watching the movie, and the line was like, "We're all the size of boogers." And I was like, wait a second. Disney Channel literally removed the word boogers and replaced it with bugs because boogers was too gross for Disney Channel.
Oh my gosh.
Once again, that's back when Disney Channel was very different from Disney. These days we had fart jokes on Sweet Life on Deck.
Oh, hardcore fart jokes in like foot fungi. Like that was a mess episode.
That was nasty.
Sorry, I made you watch that.
That's all right. I forgive you. But so that was. We were just talking about Zeke and Luther. I actually kind of enjoyed the show for what it was. I thought that those two kids were had some really good chemistry. And the situation was ridiculous, but fun nonetheless. Totally not a show I would have watched. It's way too sports centric. These two kids are professional skateboarders.
Yeah, and I was hardcore into skateboarding at this point, so I was like, "Oh, bro, like that's gnarly and rad." So I had to watch Zeke and Luther.
That's gnarly and rad. That's stuff you said in real life, huh?
There's stuff I said in real life as a 10-year-old. You also use bomb. That is bomb, dope, and boss. Boss was another really good one.
All
Bro,
right.
that flip was boss.
Were you actually a skateboarder?
Yeah, actually, I was. I started skateboarding when I was 8. I still skate now. Living that California kid image. But while I was watching Zeke and Luther, I was super into skateboarding. So that was kind of one of the reasons why that was one of my favorite shows.
I tried to be a cool kid in skateboard, but I was terrible at it. And I don't know how anybody does it. Like, it seems so unnatural to me.
Oh, it is. It definitely is. There have been multiple, I broke my arm skateboarding.
Oh, wow. I did that on a bicycle.
Nice.
Yeah. Definitely
messed up the tailbone. There was definitely more pain than success when it came to skateboarding, but it all comes out in the wash.
I actually caused a car accident with my skateboard because, so I was in my driveway and I was using my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles skateboard.
Nice.
And the skateboard went out from under me and just shot out into the street. and somebody was driving by and, of course, sees this thing coming in the street and slams on their brakes. My skateboard gets caught underneath their car. It destroys my skateboard. And, of course, that's the thing I'm most worried about. Yet there I was, like, scared the crap out of this poor person driving this car who probably thought I was like right behind it chasing the skateboard, but no, it was just my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle skateboard got destroyed. Like it didn't have wheels after. They were all like, yeah, like the plastic wheels were all grinded down to shreds. It's terrible.
Rest in peace to Jeff's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles skateboard.
That was back when we weren't forced to wear helmets, and and we're just idiot children. So it's the 90s for you. Anyhow, let's get to our last show, and this one's epic. This one, so you must have heard of MMC before this.
Definitely heard of MMC. This was definitely my favorite out of the three that you had me watch. And I don't know if it's because of my short attention span and how quickly each segment would go by, or if it was the fact that I got to see Justin Timberlake as a 12-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, whatever, how old he was, definitely as a preteen. But Mickey Mouse Club was so much fun.
Yeah, so MMC was the new Mickey Mouse Club, and this was the one that was really crazy. This ran from 1989 to 94, and the people who became more famous came in toward the end. They had a bit of a different cast at the beginning. Some of them stuck around, some of them didn't come back and whatever. But, I mean, the names that came out of there, JC Chazet and Justin Timberlake from NSYNC, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Kerry Russell, who am I missing? I feel like there's more. Ryan Gosling. Like, crazy how many successful people came out of that show. But this is a show that I would definitely tune into whenever I could.
Oh, totally. And it was, you were talking about how Adventures in Wonderland was shot on the MGM studios. At the very end of the credits sequence, the voice came over. This was shot in beautiful Orlando, Florida. And I just thought that was not Orlando, but
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think what they used to say. They used to say something like MMC was shot in front of a live studio audience at Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Something like that.
Yep, I think that was pretty darn close. Good work, Jeff.
And they would show the Earful Tower.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they totally showed the Earful Tower, and I was like, that is so cool that they would shoot that at the park.
Rest in peace, Earful Tower. Oh.
Rest in peace, Earful Tower. My gosh.
I want that. I just want that in my backyard, man. Like,
Go to Paris. You can find it in Paris.
Yeah, not as cool. Not as cool.
Not as cool.
But I will say Britney Spears was a terrible actress on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing about Justin Timberlake's performances is he is like, you could cut to him on MMC as a kid and then a sketch of him on Saturday Night Live. I'm like, clearly the same person.
Totally. It's so awesome to watch the formation of his personality and comedic style that then got transferred over to bring it on down to, whatever town it was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and who I loved was, this guy is not famous, but I loved the guy who was Mark and had that voice. Dude, he was like, what a boom. I hope he has a voiceover career at this point.
Oh, he's got to. I think.
He had such a great voice.
Such a great voice.
And my goodness, Britney and Christina Aguilera, they were tiny, tiny people. They were probably two of the youngest. Ryan Gosling's hilarious on that show. If you go back, I don't think that was specifically in the episode I sent you, but you had Ryan Gosling singing and dancing on that show. Like, he had a whole little thing going on that most people don't really know about. And Kerry Russell, oh my goodness, to me, she was always the girl, first of all, that I thought I was going to marry. That didn't happen, folks. And but I knew her from Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I was like, oh yeah, because I love that movie. And then, of course, she went on to Felicity and everything. And I don't know, MMC's great. Just the live studio audience at Disney MGM Studios. So much fun. Now, tell me, you're probably too old. The demographic is younger than you. Are you following the new Mickey Mouse Club?
Okay, so I definitely saw the trailer for it on Facebook, and then after that, I didn't really hear much about it, and so I haven't been following it, but it's definitely something I would want to check out because it looks to me like they're trying their best to try and bring it back to the roots, but, keeping it with this, 2018 kind of modern twist, because it was like so funny to watch MMC's title sequence.
Yeah.
I was definitely relating that to Bill Nye the Science Guy, the way that title kind of worked, just because it was so funny to see all the record or listen to all the record scratches, in the theme song.
Yes.
And all the pop kind of the pop art sort of pictures of all this different stuff. I just thought it was so cool and very, very, very reminiscent of the 90s. But no, I haven't been following too well with the new. Are they calling it the Mickey Mouse Club? Or are they calling it MMC? What are they calling
Club
it?
Mickey Mouse.
Oh, right. Because you got to have a different name so that you can sell more merch.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. I mean, one of the cool things about the Mickey Mouse Club, I think it's actually a really cool tradition that Disney has, the Mickey Mouse Club. And every time it comes back, they try to make it for the current audience, which obviously is smart. I do find it interesting. I found it like blasphemous, but also really interesting how like the current Mickey Mouse Club, Club Mickey Mouse, which I think Club Mickey Mouse is a little bit too much of a differentiation. Like they're still called Mouseketeers, but I don't really consider them kids that are on the Mickey Mouse Club. Like Club Mickey Mouse is too much of a separate thing in my mind because it's not a TV show. Mickey Mouse Club actually started out as a club in movie theaters. It was to encourage people to come to see movies and stuff. And so Club Mickey Mouse was like locals, clubs at movie theaters. Then Walt Disney made a TV show. And then there's a revamp at some point before MMC as well. And now I just find it interesting that it lives only on social media, which is how kids consume their products. It's very interesting to me.
Very, very interesting. See, the theater club is something that I didn't even know about. That's really interesting. And something that I kind of wish that they would bring back. That's pretty cool.
Now it's called D23 and you get to pay for it.
That's a good call.
Yeah. But yeah, the Club Mickey Mouse, I checked it out very little. I would be curious to know how it's doing. It's really funny because I have a new nephew. He'll turn 2 in August. His name is Gabe. Hey, Gabe, if you're listening. It's interesting seeing things, like I'm really kind of excited to see him grow up, to see these things through his eyes, because one of the things that I've recently found out through him is like for years I've always been like, listen, I love Cars Land is great at Disney California Adventure, but I'm like, why on earth would you invest in an entire land for cars? And I'd always heard, I'm like, because they sell toys. And I get it, yeah, sure, they sell toys, yeah, whatever, like I get it, money talks. But I see my nephew with his Cars toys. He's obsessed with his Cars toys. He's not even 2 years old yet. And he's obsessed with his Cars toys. So like it's going to be fun to watch him grow up and see how so like now I have this whole different way of thinking of cars. It's really interesting. So I can't wait to see him grow up. And so I don't have anybody in my life like who would be the Club Mickey Mouse age right now, which I think is like, what, 13-year-olds they're probably trying to go after?
I would assume probably between 10 and 13, that pre-teen stage, probably.
Yeah, so I'd be very curious to see what they think of it. And I don't know, I'd just be curious to see the numbers as well from Disney and whether or not they're happy with it, because it's the most different of any Mickey Mouse Club there's been,
especially because it's a little bit less accessible to kids because it's being streamed on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, it's a whole social media thing, so Facebook and Instagram essentially.
Yeah, and if they're going for that 10 to 13 audience, I think that parents, like, I didn't get my Instagram, I only got my Facebook this year, and my Instagram I think I got in like 6th grade when I was like turning 13. So it'll be interesting to see if it's kind of more of a parents thing, being like, oh, this is something to distract my kids with, or if it's something where, you know, kids are talking about it in their classes, like, oh, did you catch this episode on Instagram? You know, and I don't know if it's even an episode thing or if it's more of just like a sporadic kind of quick.
It's not episodes from what I understand. It's just like kind of little 5-minute or less things. And maybe live streams every once in a while. I don't really know. I don't watch it. But that's the impression I got, is that it's that. But in any case, MMC was still cool. Still stuck to that classic Mickey Mouse Club format. And, you know, it had the sketches and the musical numbers, and it was a lot of fun. Britney Spears was the Annette Funicello of my generation.
Whoa. I like that a lot. Throw that on a t-shirt. Britney Spears was the Annette Funicello of the 90s.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. She's one of those people, I gotta be honest, I would never pay. I loved Britney Spears. Like I'm a total TRL kid. Do you even know what TRL is?
Yeah, on MTV.
Okay.
I will tell you, I only know that because they remade it and then I learned about the old one. But
oh, really? Sincerely?
Yeah.
That's wow. Well, I was on the old one, FYI. I was interviewed by the host, Carson Daly.
Really?
Yeah, I was.
That is so cool.
Back in like 2000 or something, and I have like an NSYNC baseball cap on. Dude, I felt like I was the man. Yeah. But in any case, Britney, so like I was totally into TRL. I was the right age at that time. And Britney Spears was huge, and I loved her. But even back then, I was like, I would never pay a dime to see this girl. I will spend all my money on NSYNC, but she doesn't even sing live. Like, it drove me crazy. And now watching her on MMC, I'm just like, oh yeah, I honestly don't know how she got as famous as she is, but somebody did a really good job taking care of her. And good for her, I guess. Anyway, those were the shows we chose. So you chose, say them one more time.
I chose The Sweet Life on Deck. I chose Zeke and Luther, and I chose Kickin It.
And my choices were Phil of the Future, Adventures in Wonderland, and MMC. So those are the two different generations look at Disney Channel. And anything else you want to say about it before we get on to some trivia?
Let's see. I think it was a blast getting to kind of jump back a little bit into something that I hadn't, discovered because it was not the generation that I grew up in. But it was so much fun to kind of draw some comparisons and see what the generation before me was watching on the Disney Channel.
And it was enlightening watching what the kids were watching not so long ago. I will say that. Anyway, I think that means it's trivia time! Okay, Jack, do you want to hit me with a question first, or shall I hit you?
Let's see. Let me hit you with one. This might be a bit of an easy one, so I've got a little bit more of a trickier one afterward. Okay. But this first one is The Sweet Life on Deck, right? So that show came from, like, as we said, came from The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. And one of the main characters on The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody was Maddie. Now, Maddie also played another character in a Disney Channel original movie.
Ooh.
Can you tell me what movie and what character that was?
Nope, not at all. Was Maddie the Osmond girl? Wasn't like... oh my goodness. What's that boy's name from The Sixth Sense?
Haley Joel Osment?
Yeah, wasn't his sister on Zach and Cody?
Oh, shoot. I do not remember. I know that Maddie, this is going to be your ultimate hint. Maddie was played by Ashley Tisdale.
Oh. And what was the question?
The question was, what movie and what character did she
High School Musical, Sharpay.
Good call. So jumping off of that, of the three movies, of the three TV shows that I gave you, Kickin It, The Sweet Life, and Zeke and Luther, there were three characters, one from each of those series that had Disney Channel original movies that they were in. Can you name those Disney Channel original movies?
Okay, so Sweet Life on Deck. Oh, I can't even name that one. I don't think the Sprouses had a Disney Channel movie, did they?
They did.
What was it called?
The Sweet Life movie. I'm pretty positive.
Okay, well, I guess that makes sense.
Something along those lines.
Kickin It, I'm going to guess that the lead boy had a movie.
Which you would be incorrect. It was actually Kim who was the lead in Girl versus Monster.
Okay, I've never even heard of that one.
I don't think I ever watched that one, but I think my sister thought it was pretty cool. It's one of those Halloween movies during Scaroween or whatever it was that was on Disney Channel. And then when it comes to Zeke and Luther, I'm going to guess
the redheaded kid. Was he a redhead? I think he was a redhead.
Yes.
Him. He looks like he would have a DCOM. Did he have a DCOM?
He did have a DCOM. He was one of the 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there were 5 main characters in this movie, and it was
Halloween Town?
No, Lemonade Mouth.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Is that based on a book or something?
It was based on a book.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I failed that pretty miserably.
I told you that last one was a little bit trickier than the first one.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Well, I got something that honestly I discovered rewatching Adventures in Wonderland. I was like, I know that voice, I know that face. And this voice and this face, 2 different people, are part of my favorite movie trilogy of all time, and that is Back to the Future.
Oh.
Do you have any idea which 2 characters or actors from Adventures in Wonderland are part of the Back to the Future franchise? And if so, which movies and which roles?
Whoa. I am not even going to play it like...
Please tell me you've seen the Back to the Future trilogy, yes?
Yes, okay. Definitely. I cannot say that I'm even going to attempt an answer on this because I have no idea. You got to tell me.
Okay. So the actor who played Tweedledee...
Okay.
is the singer at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
Oh,
Earth Angel, Earth Angel.
Yeah.
That's Tweedledee.
Oh my gosh. That's
I know.
Deep cut. I love it.
And well, it's funny because I was watching Adventures in Wonderland and I was like, I just know that voice. I know that voice. I'm like, oh my goodness. I just heard Earth Angel. And so I IMDb'd it. I'm like, sure enough. And then I recognize this actor's face who played the caterpillar.
Yeah.
Okay. In Back to the Future Part 2, when they're in that sequence where they go back to 1955 and it's kind of like they're in the first movie. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So Marty McFly, the one from Part 2, comes and punches Biff and knocks him out again. And then goes running away. He takes the almanac from him. And there's an actor, small part but very memorable, who goes, did he just take his wallet? I think he took his wallet. And it's the caterpillar.
Really?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's, like I said, it's like a small role. I don't even know if the character has a name, but that guy has such a specific look that I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like that's him.
I love that the connection was made there. That's so cool.
Isn't that insane? So both of them are part of the Back to the Future franchise, which I think is kind of amazing.
That is kind of cool.
That's fantastic. Anyway, Jack, thank you so much for coming on Disney Coast to Coast. Why don't you plug whatever you want before we get out of here?
Oh, yay, I get to plug. So I am one of the 4 guys on Happy Hour Live on the No Midnight podcast. It's a Wednesday night live show that's actually going away next week. We are kind of rebranding ourselves, creating some new content, new fun things. We're definitely still going to have 3 shows every week. We're going to have a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday show. But you got to stick around to know about those ones. Go follow us over at the No Midnight Podcast, over at the nomidnightpodcast.com. I currently am working on a YouTube series for the No Midnight Podcast called The Summer of Jack. And what we're doing over there is kind of documenting what I'm up to this summer. And make sure to go check that out on our YouTube channel over at the No Midnight YouTube channel. And yeah, I think that's it. No Midnight Podcast is where you can find us on all of the socials. And make sure to go check us out Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
I think one of your Summer of Jack episodes should be you in front of a computer just watching old MMC episodes.
I think that's a great idea. Just Jack reacts to old MMC episodes. It's going to be like 4 hours long. I'm just going to find like at one of those YouTube live ones where it just keeps the episodes going 24/7.
There you go.
Just do that.
Fun times. Well, Jack, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Jeff, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
And before we get going, I do want to remind all of you about the big Hocus Pocus 25th anniversary event that I am producing and moderating over at Midsummer Scream on Sunday, July 29th in Long Beach, California. It is shaping up to be quite an awesome panel. More details can be found at midsummerscream.org, and that's the same place where you can go and get your tickets. All of our social media can be found over at Disney Coast to Coast as well. Make sure you leave those 5-star iTunes ratings and reviews to help more people find the show more easily. And I want to give a shout out to my patrons, Philip, Rio, Monet, Susanna, Anna, Diego, and James. Thank you so much for being Patreon supporters of Disney Coast to Coast. It's because of folks like you that I get to produce more and more episodes. If you would like to support the show, head to patreon.com/DCTC and you can check out all the different types of rewards that you can get there. Other than that, have a magical day, everybody. Bye!
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePaoli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.